Welcome back folks, my name's Shane. In today's video we're checking out a set of studio monitors from Adam Audio. These are the Adam Audio A7V active near-field two-way studio monitors. This review will walk you through everything you need to know about these monitors from a practical, sound quality and setup standpoint. I'll also talk about how these A7V monitors compare up against the less expensive Adam Audio T7V speakers that I'm currently using and have been using now for about 4 years or so. The whole idea behind a great set of studio monitors is to make your life easier when it comes to mixing a project of any type, whether that's a solo or duo acoustic guitar project, whether you're mixing synthwave, a full blues band, whatever the case may be. The idea is to get great sound reproduction to make mixing a whole lot easier. I'm going to talk about whether the A7V is a big upgrade over the T7V, as they're far more expensive. Before we get into it, a massive thanks to Adam Audio for setting out these speakers for the review. I really appreciate it. This will still be a pros and cons review, and I'm going to review it in comparison to what I have on hand, which in this case will be my original T7V monitors from Adam Audio. As you can see behind me here, I'm right in the middle of mixing a live performance for an upcoming video on the channel. This is perfect timing to test out how my current mix sounds on the new speakers versus the old. If you don't know the channel, I've been using the Adam Audio T7Vs for hundreds of videos on the channel since getting them. I've used these speakers on everything from live band recordings, studio recordings, guitar and bass reviews, pedal demos, and just about everything else. I also recorded, just quietly, a synthwave track using them. This little converted bedroom into a home studio room is where I do all of my mixing. It's not a professionally sound treated studio, but it does the job, and the results hopefully have spoken for themselves. Let's cover everything we get in the box. Including the box, we get an instruction manual, power cable, and the speaker. The speakers are protected by a cloth to prevent scratching from transportation. This is a really nice touch. Let's talk about the driver setup. So the Adam Audio A7V speakers are quite a bit different to the T7V speakers that I'm currently using. While the drivers and tweeters look similar to the untrained eye, the new speakers have a few unique changes. The driver is a 7-inch multi-layer mineral woofer with the addition of a new ArtX rotatable tweeter. That's right, you can actually rotate this horizontally. So if you want to run the speaker not in vertical mode, which is how it's set up right now, you can flip it to the side, rotate the tweeter, and have it sonically match. I'll be using these in the vertical orientation. They'll just plonk directly on the existing speaker stands. These A7V monitors now have a flared front ported design that helps optimize airflow and reduce port noise. This means that unlike the T7V, there's no backloaded port. Now, whether you prefer front or backloaded ports, that's up to you, but at the end of the day, both can be used effectively, so I have no complaints whatsoever. Another massive inclusion is the ability to tweak the speaker's DSP settings over Ethernet with the help of the free A-Control software. This software allows you to tweak the response of the speakers to suit the room that you're mixing in. A bedroom will sound vastly different to a larger dining room, for example, and you can tailor the sound of the speaker to suit the room if need be. The software isn't required to operate the speakers, which is also appreciated. While each speaker can be controlled over Ethernet, you need to provide your own cables and also a little Ethernet switch like this. Even a simple one like this will do the job, and I'll link this down below. As you can see on the stand here, the A7Vs are essentially the same size as the T7V. So if you're thinking about upgrading to the A7Vs, your existing speaker stands will do the job. Let's take a look at the back panel on the A7V. It's quite a bit different to that of the T7V, which has more of an analog vibe going on. So if we take a look at the new speaker, one of the biggest inclusions here is this Ethernet port or remote control port. As I mentioned earlier, you can plug your Ethernet port into there, into a hub or switcher, and then control the speaker's features remotely. So that's always good, but we also get the ability to use this room adaptation EQ feature here. We get different presets that we can toggle through, and we'll go through some of those in just a moment. But basically it gives you more flexibility and creative control just by using the back panel of the speaker itself. We get our RCA input, which is an unbalanced input, and of course the XLR, which is fantastic. We also now get an input selection switch as opposed to just plugging into one or the other. Now, of course, you can use these speakers without any of the fancy EQ curves and so forth. If you choose to use the voicing control, just set it to pure and it will bypass all of those features. And lastly, the level control goes all the way from -12 dB to +12 dB, whereas looking at the speaker on the top, the T7V, it goes from -60 to +18 dB. So this will be interesting just to see how loud these are in context of what I'm used to in the room. Up next, I'm going to compare the audio quality of the standard T7Vs up against the A7V. So I'm going to switch them over in just a moment. Just know there's no easy way for me to showcase this other than giving you my opinions on what I'm hearing in the room. after years of using the T7V, so I'm pretty much anticipating I should hear a difference between them, but just know you're listening to a room recording anytime you're hearing the music, because I can't mic up a set of studio monitors because every device in the world will make this sound different. So I'm going to give you my overall opinion on them in just a moment. But we're going to start just by listening to the T7Vs. I was working on this project all of last night, and I'm yet to hook up the new speakers. So this is the T7V original speakers that I've been using for a long time. Here we go. I'm really happy with this mix. It's got a lot of live vibe going on, good amount of reverb. The bass is low and full sound, and kick drums there. Everything's there. I can hear everything just beautifully in the mix. So it was a real simple project to edit this one because everything was mic'd up properly to begin with. But anyway, that's a topic for another video. Let's switch over to the speakers. And now over to the A7V speakers. The setup process was nice and simple. XLR went in, power cable went in, turned them on. I set the volume on the back of each speaker to 0 dB to start with. And the great news is it's an LED indicator on the front, letting you know that the speaker is currently on. I think this is great. So let's give this a shot. I'll be controlling the volume just thanks to my Focusrite sound card here. I'm going to play the same portion back. All right, so there's definitely a difference between these speakers. I'm not going to say that one blows the other one away because that's not the case. They just both handle frequencies differently. So the T7Vs, the original ones that I had, the bass response, just listening back, sounded fuller and better in the mix to my ear than it does right now. But that's because I am not mixed on these speakers. If I had done this the opposite way, it may have sounded like that the bass response on the original speakers was too fat and full in the mix, because it's all what you get used to mixing with, and then when you listen to it on different systems, you can get your final result and get an understanding of how to best mix for your speakers. But in the room right here, it actually sounds pretty good. The high-end frequency response is unreal. It just feels like I need to turn the bass up a little bit in the mix. So I'm just gonna have one quick play with that right now and just have a fiddle around with the bass track. That additional bass that I'm hearing could just be the front ported design on these too, but it sounds very similar. I'm not hearing a huge difference just as it is. So I'm going to check out some of this DSP functionality now and let you know what I think of it. But I think if you're on a budget and you don't want to spend the big bucks on these A7Vs, the T7Vs are fantastic. And whether or not I was using one or the other, I'd probably get very similar results just running these in the flat profile. Let's talk about the DSP software. So I've just hooked this up, and the great news is it's nice and simple to use, or you can dig right into the advanced features and change a whole bunch of parameters, including volume. So say for example, if you're in a studio, it's not ideal, you've got one speaker slightly further away than the other, you can adjust the volume not only on the back of the speaker, but also through this app. It's nice and simple to do. As you can see on screen right here, I've got the app set up and it's called Main DSP. I just saved this one as a preset. It allows us to do one-click changes to the treble, presence, desk, and bass response. So if I want the bass to sound as fat as it did prior with the old speakers, I can just click this up one notch and it sounds pretty much exactly the same. One major upgrade with the A7Vs is that they handle the volume far better than the T7Vs. That was my only complaint at the time of my review. While the T7V sounded far better than my Rokit KRK8s, the Rokits, pretty much you could crank them as loud as you like and they didn't distort, which was pretty cool. These feel like they handle the same sort of sound pressure levels. I think they're rated around 105 dB. If that's wrong, I'll leave it on screen, but they're plenty loud, even with the volume on the back set to 12 o'clock and just adjusting the monitor volume here. They're every bit as loud or louder than the T7Vs, which is great. So I'm just going to have a quick play around with this on camera so you can get a sense of how it works. I'll play the same part again so it sounds familiar. Again, you'll be listening to the camera audio. I know this is a bit hard to hear on camera, but what I have noticed is just by adjusting the bass and treble up one on each of those EQ points, it made it sound very familiar to the way I like to mix, so that's really cool. I'm going to show you the advanced features now as well. When it comes to the advanced features, one thing I've noticed is how simplified this whole entire process is when it comes to workflow. So one of the biggest advantages is I'll never have to go to the back of the speakers and adjust anything manually. I can do it all via the software thanks to this control panel. So if we're running XLR RCA, we can switch it over just by using the app. We can add a speaker delay if we need to as well. There's also a level adjustment. So if one speaker is further away than the other, you can just bring it up incrementally. Or maybe your hearing's not as good on one side as the other, you can bring that side up a little bit so it sounds balanced to your ear, and then you can make your mix that way. So there's plenty of options here as well. We can change the frequency. We can really get in there and deep dive just by clicking on these EQ enable buttons here. We can change the frequency, the gain, and the Q. The Q is sort of like the spike of frequency that you're adjusting. You've seen that in parametric EQs before, but yeah, very cool. What I'm going to do now is have a listen to these tweak settings that I've made via the app, and then we're going to go back to the old speakers and have a listen. So here we go. All right, let's switch it back. Now back to the Adam Audio T7Vs. I'm gonna have a quick listen to this and then I'll give you my final results. And now back to the A7Vs. All right, I can definitely hear some differences now listening back this third time around. So I've swapped speakers back and forth a few times now. There's a difference not only in the overall fidelity of these speakers, the top end is way more present. The hi-hats sound far better on these speakers than the prior ones, but not by that much, but there is a difference. These also feel like they handle the volume a whole lot better as well. So that means if I'm playing guitar on a pedal review video, for example, or something like that, I'm gonna have more volume to work with to get that sort of amp in a room feel, which may be counterintuitive to using the two notes capital X, but you get the point. You've got a little bit more flexibility there in terms of volume. It doesn't feel like these are struggling whatsoever. They do have a really premium sound, but again, the T7Vs are awesome. All right, let's wrap this video up. I'm gonna talk about the pros and cons of the A7V studio monitors from Adam Audio, and I'm also gonna talk about how they compare to the T7Vs in a little bit more detail. So if you're just getting started and you're wondering whether or not it's worth the upgrade to get the A7Vs over the T7Vs, I would say get the T7Vs if you're just getting started. I could use these to do any of my music production stuff, and I have been for the last 4 years, and they've done an amazing job. There is a difference in the overall sound quality between both speakers, and thankfully that was more evident the more I switched back and forth. Again, it feels like the A7Vs handle volume better, and they tend to just fill the room a little bit better than the T7Vs, but you can get great results out of both. And with a bit of tweaking, I'm sure you can get both to sound very similar to a point. And then of course comes down to the DSP functionality. This is where the A7Vs actually really shine. I was a bit unsure of what the DSP functionality would be like and the app and having it connected via Ethernet, but it worked great and I have no complaints with it. The only foreseeable downside with these speakers is the price. I know they're going to be outside of a lot of people's budgets, but again, if that's the case, the T7V is the way to go. It's hard to kind of justify the difference in the price if you're just getting started, but if you are a more seasoned professional and you're making money, again, engineering bands, whatever the case may be, producing CDs or MP3s or albums or whatever the digital media is these days, then I would say go for the new ones. But if you're not, the T7Vs will definitely do the job. The great speakers. I'm going to leave these ones up for the next few months. You'll see them in every video moving forward from this point, and then I'll give you maybe a follow-up video talking about the differences, but they're both great and they're a massive upgrade sound quality wise over my old Rokit KRK-8s, which were great monitors for probably almost 10 years. I had those before going over to the Adam Audios, and these just made making my mixes far easier. Great speakers, what can I tell you? No wonder they win so many awards. Thanks again for watching. My name's Shane. I'll catch you soon. See ya.